Kia ora everyone, and welcome to the session today, Getting the Most Out of Mathematics and Statistics for Aotearoa New Zealand. Thank you very much for joining us today, and apologies for the slightly delayed start. We're just having a few technical issues today, so I think that the presentation will be fine, but there may be some slides where you can't quite see the animations in the PowerPoint deck, so bear with us, please. So, no mai, haere mai, and welcome. Thank you. We value your time and we really appreciate you showing up today. Today's session will be hosted by me, Daniel. I'm the Program and Curriculum Specialist for New Zealand, and I have been working exclusively on New Zealand mathematics and statistics for about the last 6 weeks. I'm a former teacher, and I've been working at Oxford for many years now, too many to count, 12 or 13. And in that time, I've been working on mainly secondary product, but now I'm really excited to be joining the New Zealand team and supporting schools around New Zealand. And today I'm joining you from really sunny Dunedin in Otago, where I'll be visiting schools for the next 10 days. And I'm really fortunate today to be joined by Lee Walker, who's the Product Director for Australia and New Zealand. And Lee has also been very active in New Zealand for the last month up in Auckland.
Oh, hello, everybody. Maybe some of you already know me and I saw you in Auckland. If I did, hello again. And for the new ones, new teachers I haven't met in person yet, hello, and I hope to get to meet you one day. But great to be here. Thank you for being here.
So before we begin, today's session has been designed for teachers who've already started implementing the refresh curriculum and have some experience with the Oxford program. So if you've joined us today and you're brand new to Oxford, you maybe haven't opened the boxes yet, and you're just sort of getting your head around it, then welcome and please stick around. But do be sure to watch our Prepare to Teach introductory training session, because some elements that we'll be talking about today sort of assume some prior knowledge. But there's a link in the slide, the last slide before we leave today, with a link to our YouTube channel. And there's a bunch of introductory videos, including the Prepare to Teach session, which you can watch at your leisure. So the session's a little bit different today. We're going to try and get this all done and dusted in 45 minutes. So Lee and I will be talking to you for around 30 minutes, and that will be followed by about 15 minutes for question and discussion. So your cameras and microphones will be disabled for this first portion of the presentation, but we'll open them all up and you'll be able to join in a discussion at the end. But if you're the shy type, please feel free to post a question in the comments or the chat at any time, and we'll, with the help of the lovely Bryn from our marketing team who's moderating for us today, we'll get through those questions at the end. And if we run out of time, we'll be sure to respond to any question that was left in the chat directly after the session. So let's jump in. So really today, what we're focusing on is sharing some of the feedback that we have learned from speaking to you. So some really clear themes emerged from that feedback. And so we're going to be talking to you about how we're addressing not only the top concerns, but a range of different responses and feedback and suggestions that we've received from you. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have some time for questions and discussions at the end. So what have we learned? I think one of the main things is that we have been busy, haven't we, Lee? We've been out in lots of schools since term one. It's just a little grab bag of numbers here for you. We've visited around over 180 schools right across New Zealand. We've conducted detailed written surveys with 92 of those schools, and they've given us some really solid formal feedback. We have delivered like over 100 product training and PLD sessions. So if you have attended one of our Prepare to Teach sessions, or one of our check-ins, or one of our PLD sessions through our partners at Evaluation Associates, either in person or online, then you're one of that 100. But in addition to that, we've also been conducting some more sort of formalized research. So we've established relationships with 3 case study schools. And we've been working, or Lee has been working closely with those. We've shot some videos there where those user schools have shared some of their experiences implementing the refresh curriculum and the new program. And as well, we've been conducting formal research with 8 impact schools. And both of those reports are due to be published in August. Lee, you might want to just quickly talk to us a bit about the impact schools and about what the Oxford Impact Framework is designed to do.
Sure, I'll try not to read off the screen, but it is a very formal approach to evaluating the impact our programs are having on teachers as well as students. The impact study that we're doing for Oxford Maths and Statistics for Aotearoa New Zealand is around teacher confidence in implementing the new curriculum and also the recommended new ways of teaching or new pedagogies. So I've actually got the internal report in, and I'm just amid developing the external facing report, which I have to show to the schools and get their approval before we release it. But it's really fabulous research that is supported by the National Foundation for Educational Research and also the University of Oxford. And I can't wait to share it with you. There will be nothing in that research that you don't already know, I don't think. But it's really nice to get that formalised, those formalised responses from schools, which we measure. And then we'll come back, because it's only been 6 months since you've been implementing the curriculum, so there's still lots to learn. We'll come back in 12 to 18 months time and do some research on top of that research to see where you're all at. And we'll also share it with the ministry as well, that top level research, which will be terrific.
Yeah, and I think nice to actually test whether our intentions in our program have been realised, really.
Absolutely. So it'll be really exciting to see where we're all at and where you're all at the end of this year, to see where your kids are at after this first 12 months of really quite significant change for a lot of you. So, hopefully it will be all good, but it is a work in progress, not a silver bullet in the first year by any stretch.
Okie doke. So I'm going to spend a few minutes now sort of just talking through some general observations, and feel free to chime in, Lee, on some of this. Now, sort of in most of the schools, and in the sort of 6 weeks or so I've been in the role, I think I've nearly visited around 35 to 40 schools now, and some kind of clear, feedback's coming through in the way that schools are implementing. So I've just called these, for want of a better term, high trust and high consistency schools. So I've noticed it's a broad spectrum, and that's absolutely fine. Schools will implement the curriculum and the Oxford program in a way that suits them, their teachers and their learners. And so there are no right or wrong ways to do this. But I just was interested to see how there were really clear groups of schools doing one or the other thing. So when I talk about sort of a high trust environment, these are schools where the individual teachers have been sort of given the responsibility to take the curriculum and the program away and implement it in their own classrooms. So they're using it to different degrees. They're sort of playing to learn and seeing how it goes. And most of these schools who are doing this are really then having kind of a regular check-in to kind of compare notes amongst each other and see how it's going. Now, the opposite end of the spectrum are those schools who kind of really value a high consistency approach. So what's happening in those schools is that executive teams or heads of department are sort of coordinating the implementation. So classroom teachers are sort of being given more guidance, I guess, and more direction. And they're working often in whole school or phase teams to plan, implement, and assess the success of the program and the curriculum. And then they're coming back to adapt it if required. But I think another thing that's been really interesting to learn, and I think which is great, is that many schools started at one end of the spectrum, tried that for a term, and then decided to try the other end of the spectrum, which I think is really sensible. I don't know whether this is the same kind of feedback that you've been getting from your schools, Lee.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no one right way. Those schools that have had a high trust among their staff have been experimenting and testing things out and kicking against each other in terms of what's working and what's not. And that has really worked very, very well for them. But so is the high consistency approach. And I think even with what you just said before, Dan, the high consistency approach with feedback from their teaching teams, they've been able to go, oh, okay, we just need to nuance that a little bit. Yeah. So as long as the feedback loop is there, both have been working really well. across all the schools that I visited in Auckland, and there was a range.
Yeah, agree. I did think it was kind of like interesting to maybe share a couple of Australian studies at this point, though, because it sort of speaks to, you know, the need for an approach or a consistent resource or set of resources within a school in order to really improve learning outcomes. So there are a couple of studies here produced by the Grattan Report that I just wanted to refer you to. We can share links to these if you're interested in having a bit of a read. But the first was released in 2022 and the second in 2025, and there was a survey of around 7,000 teachers in the first study, which explored the kinds of pressure that schools and teachers are under when implementing curriculum. So curriculum planning, you know, the studies found in Australia is often pretty inconsistent and it's pretty burdensome for teachers. So a lot of Australian teachers are left to plan lessons on their own. They're doing this from scratch, they're duplicating work, and it's leading to inconsistencies not only in the learning experiences of students in a school, but it's also resulting in a lot of burnout amongst teachers. So, you know, again, whether you are a high trust or a high consistency model, I think the moral of the story here is that, you know, whole school planning does make a difference. And so schools who kind of adopt a program like Oxford's, or they combining a program and adapting it, whether they're doing it individually as classroom teachers or as a group of teachers, leads to a more consistent approach across the school with higher teacher satisfaction and actually saves a lot of time. So schools that use an explicit sort of systematic approach, they target it, there's targeted catch up and support and high quality learning resources, see strong improvements. So if you're interested in any of that research, as I mentioned, I'll share the links and you can have a read. It's quite interesting. So from that, I really kind of wanted to just share a few thoughts around what I've observed and some takeaways for me. So really the suggested learning sequences in the Oxford program, so the lesson plans, resources, assessments have been designed to really provide a high degree of structure and support. And our intention here is that if you're a beginning teacher, you may like to use these resources as written out of the box, because as you get your head around the new curriculum and the new program, beginning, you know, in that way kind of at least lets you test the approach to make sure that you're happy with it. And if you do feel a little bit at sea because you're a new teacher, this is often a really good way to go. And we've had some strong feedback from schools about that. But likewise, we've got a lot of really experienced teachers out there who are just really dabbling with the program. They've got a quite well-oiled machine going on in their classes. And yet, in order to meet the new requirements of the curriculum, they are having to make some changes. And so particularly in the lesson plans, resources, and in the workbooks, there's a structure there that can be followed. But really the intention is that as you build confidence with the refreshed curriculum and with our program, you can adapt the teaching practice and the program itself accordingly. So yeah, I think this has been a really key takeaway for me, Lee. I don't know whether you want to chime in here, but I've been in a lot of schools who've asked me things like, oh, if I don't like that lesson plan, is it okay if I just don't do that activity? And the answer to that question is a resounding yes. Our program is, as I mentioned, really structured and supportive, but it is not prescriptive. So if you don't use one or more pieces of the puzzle, you're not going to break it. In fact, we would encourage you to take it, adapt it, and make it yours. So feel free to add, delete, or modify any of the learning sequences, the lesson plans, and the resources to suit your teaching style and the specific needs of your school and your learners, because that way you will really embed the program and make it yours. I mean, this is a national program. So, and we know as teachers that, you know, what's happening in my classroom is different to what's happening in the classroom next to mine, let alone from Auckland down to Dunedin. Schools have vastly different requirements, different teachers, different students. So the only way to really make this truly yours is to, over time, you don't need to do it all at once, but to make changes to it, to really tailor it to the needs of your students.
And just a note, while we're here today, we're actually amid sort of adding additional activities across the lesson plans, Dan, to make sure that we're giving you enough variety and also making sure that you're adhering to what needs to be taught in the curriculum. But it is more about variety based on some feedback. They said, I just wish you could include some more activities, especially for my graduate teachers or for me, because I'm not so confident in teaching maths. And so that's what we've done. And so we've, if you went on the dashboard today, the teaching programs for the lesson plans for years 3 to 8 have already had that work done. And I'm literally today looking at the additions to years 1 and 2. And so that's great. So if you do print your lesson plans out, just remember to go back and have another look. We promise we won't make too many more corrections or additions, so you don't have to keep printing out. But it was quite a big, based on feedback again, we've added quite a lot more for you, so you have more choice.
Yeah, and just to wrap up this part of the presentation, I think really just to reiterate, that all of those teacher support documents that we provide for you are editable for that reason. And I can show you some of the work that's going to be happening for back to school next year in terms of the way those plans look and behave. But yeah, you can make them yours over time. So, as you're working through each year or through each unit or topic, you find something you like or you don't like, you can extend that, you can change it, you can make it yours. And really, I think the point that a lot of teachers have made to me too is that, you shouldn't be throwing away what worked before. There was so much good practice going on that just because the new curriculum is here, you should not be throwing that work away. You should be incorporating it into the new program, or you can be incorporating elements from the Oxford program into your established lesson plans or teaching programs. I just think to finish up there, like just a reminder that, all of the research indicates that the single biggest factor to student success is you, the teachers. So you're at the heart of the classroom and you're in control ultimately. And the resources that we're providing hopefully provide you with the tools to be able to exercise that control to get the best for your students.
Yeah, you're getting love heart emojis, Dan.
Bless. There are a couple of, I'm not going to labour on this, but there are some key takeaways that I was told from schools who've been experiencing really good take up of the program and teachers are happy. So I just wanted to summarise a couple of those. I think being really clear, if you're a head of department, an AP, a principal on the call, creating a shared kind of goal and vision is really key to embedding a program and a new curriculum like this. So if people understand what they're going to get out of it, whether that's improved student outcomes, whether that's less individual work and duplication of effort, whether it's, saving them time, whatever it takes for you to try and get some buy-in from everyone in your team across your school is going to be a really good thing. And sharing the load and communicating what's working and what's not is really key as well. That's that feedback loop Lee was referring to earlier. And of course, I just wanted to make the point that, additional training on the program and PLD is available. So if you or your team are experiencing challenges with the implementation of the program, or you just want some refresher training, we're here to help. So please just ask us. Now, let's take a look at some of the key themes that emerged from your feedback. So broadly speaking, most of the feedback fell into sort of 3 groups. So that's curriculum, content, and platform. But the really big woolly issues, and I'm going to talk to those in a minute, actually fell within these centre areas, of course. Interestingly, a content issue we're able to fix very quickly. Sometimes platform issues are easy to fix. Sometimes they're bigger pieces of work. But it's where those kinds of areas intersect that it's a challenge for us and it's a challenge for you. So essentially what we did is we got from all of our surveys and teacher, meetings and school visits, a whole mess of feedback, thousands of points of feedback, which we put into a huge spreadsheet. And, this was all before my time. So it's nice to have had it all crunched and worked through. But essentially, the feedback fell into what I've summarised here really broadly. So let's talk about the good stuff. And there's some kind of key themes across the feedback that emerged was kind of sometimes universal across all phases, and sometimes really specific to one or the other phase. Some common things that came back is that students are really loving the workbooks. They're really proud of the workbooks. Some of our staff have gone into schools and been greeted by kids like really happy to show them their workbook and what they're working through. So that's been really lovely to hear. It's nice to see kids taking pride in and owning that. I think the mastery tasks, particularly at phases 2 and 3, have been a really big hit. A lot of teachers giving us some really good feedback for those. Online tests, I think, as a concept, have been really well received, and it's a really central part of the program. But there have been some issues down into phase 1 particularly, which came through really strongly in the feedback. So I'll talk to those in a minute. And I think probably the other really good thing that was nice to hear is that people have been really appreciative of the effort we've been made to get out there, to elicit feedback, to hear what's working for people, to hear what's not working, and to actually act on it. So, hearing that, Oxford's listening, Oxford's supportive, we're responsive to your needs is really nice. And then the not so good stuff. I mean, I think one of the key things that came out across all year levels is that you want more support for teaching within the level, because that's a major challenge, and for teaching in composite settings as well. So we're going to have a look at those in a moment. There was also a bunch of feedback really based around the pre and post tests. So I will unpack some of that feedback with you as well. There was also some feedback at different levels around some inconsistent depth of coverage. Again, as Lee mentioned, some variety. So I'll show you in a minute what we're doing with that. And also some feedback, which we've now, I think, dealt with, which was related to not so much errors in the online questions, but in terms of the sort of strict parameters that were set around what our system would accept as right or wrong. So when there were multiple acceptable variations of an answer, the system was being a little bit rigid. So we have worked really hard to deal with some of those issues. So in terms of the top 3 responses, they look a little something like this, no surprises. So coming in at 3 was the problems with the formative pre and post tests and the reporting. 2 is, a request for additional support for teaching in composite settings, as well as more support for teaching within year level. So we're going to have a look at those top 3 concerns right now and what we're doing to address them. So first and foremost, and this is sort of by far, I think, the biggest challenge that schools are facing, is that people are really keen to have more support, more advice, and more forums for sharing their concerns around how they teach within level more effectively. So all of the feedback we got is really closely tied to all of what the reports are showing. We see that by year 4, 82% of students in New Zealand are meeting curriculum expectations, and that's fallen to 42%. This is the data from the National Monitoring Study School Achievement Test. And really, it's a big, woolly, I think, cultural and institutional change. What teachers have done, this is the challenge. And I've sort of created these visual elements because it sort of helped me to distill. I'd be interested to hear your feedback on what you think of this. But at any one point, by about year 4, there's a skills gap in most classrooms of between 3 to 5 plus years. So if I'm teaching at year 4 here, just as an example, I may have kids down operating at grade 2 level, some up to year 6 or beyond, or down further. So the way that schools and teachers have been trying to deal with this challenge so far really is taking resources from lower levels and sort of differentiating for their students in that way. So a sort of broad, sort of horizontal approach where you're kind of either going up into resources meant for older year levels or down to differentiate and simplify the content for students who are struggling. But really the desired state, and this is really borne out in the ministry's, in the curriculum itself, but also in the ministry's advice around that, is that we sort of need to turn that model from a horizontal model to a vertical model where, yes, students are working at level, but the goal is really that teachers will enable students to engage within their year level at some degree. And by that, I mean, success for a student, of lower ability at a grade 4 level might not be that deep. Whereas for another student, extending and enriching that and providing tasks to engage that student, enrich them and extend them within the year level so that their ability and their, what they're producing at that year level has a lot more depth is really the goal. So we've tried to work with our partners at Evaluation Association to Evaluation Associates to sort of get at the heart of these. And the way that we've done that is by creating a few short teacher support videos. So we'll be uploading those to the platform soon, Leah, I believe.
Yeah, I'm getting the final ones from Robert this afternoon. So I'll have a look at them, and then this week should be by the end of this week. They should appear in all your dashboards, the teacher dashboards, so you can watch them at any time.
Yeah, perfect.
And you'll see them come through in our newsletters and
if you're on our mailing list, you'll be given some alerts too. And so before I speak about what we're doing about these first two issues, I just want to also canvass what we're hearing really in terms of additional support for composite classrooms. So while the composite term plan has been really well received, I think a lot of issues still persist when the curriculum strands and topics don't neatly align. And this happens in the curriculum enough. The other day, a teacher told me just enough to be really annoying. So the challenge really there for us as a content provider and for the ministry, as the people who are setting that, is that when content doesn't align seamlessly, it creates issues in composite settings. But the question is, how can we do both? How can we align but also cover the sequence statements for 1 year level that are there? So again, we've created a teacher support video to kind of start talking about these issues. But I want to talk to you now about an exciting new approach that we're taking. So to address the two biggest and most significant concerns, we'll be delivering a brand new series of 9 pedagogy and practice workshops. We ran a series of pedagogy and practice workshops in terms 1 and 2 with schools, but we'll be changing up the program in order to focus specifically on delivering a range of practical suggestions and strategies for teaching within year level and composite settings. And we'll also be able to share some case studies at those workshops and examples of how different schools are meeting this challenge. So I think it's always nice to hear about how different schools are tackling the same problem, because I think, as educators, we learn a lot from that setting. So it'll also be a forum for you to be able to share your own experiences, some particular challenges that you might be facing in your own school setting, and hear from your peers. So these are quite meaty workshops. So they're sort of half-day workshops from around 3 hours long. These will be offered free of charge, but places are limited, and they'll be running throughout term 4 this year and throughout term 1 next year. So I hope that this will go some way towards providing some really practical support for you in dealing with those really two big issues. But not to forget some of the issues and problems that schools are experiencing with pre and post tests. So I'll just summarize those quickly for you. So really the issue, particularly down into phase 1, was that online pre and post tests are not appropriate for all schools and students. There's a whole variety of reasons why. Access to devices is a problem in many school settings, reliable access to internet. Also the fact that younger students are struggling to log in, they're struggling to work independently. There's a bunch of reasons why schools were keen to give us that feedback. The second main problem with that is that when schools were using the workaround advice from us, which was to do those interactive quizzes as a whole group up on the board and write their answers on paper, adding the results for these became really problematic on the reports tab of Oxford Digital. So that's another piece of strong feedback that came back. And finally, there were a lot of issues across all phases that schools were experiencing in terms of the results of pre and post tests. So I think we have been doing a lot of work clarifying the purpose of a pre-test versus a post-test. They're not always comparing apples with apples, even though a lot of schools, probably through our fault as well, calling them pre and post test. I mean, it leads you to think that your, before and after results should really show some growth. But I'll speak to you in a minute about some clarification there. But also this experience that was common across a lot of our schools, where students would perform really well in the pre-test because it's assessing prerequisite skills. So they had all the prerequisite skills to do well, but at the end of that week's learning, they were doing the post-tests and actually going backwards. So that's really distressing and not something that we are interested in putting students through. I mean, one of the key goals of ours is differentiating the content so that students can experience success and be motivated at their own level. So that's really at the heart of what we are trying to do. So I'll talk to you about how we've resolved these issues now. So the easy, not so easy fix. So it's easy in the sense that we know what to do. It's challenging for us in the sense that it's a lot of work. So, but we're committed now to delivering all printable pre and post tests for all year levels by term 1, 2026. So you'll be able to administer those tests online, or you'll be able to print them out and have students complete them on paper. So I hope that's a sigh of relief collectively across some schools, I'm sure. We're also making some really significant changes to the way in which you can enter manual scores. So if you are doing paper tests, it'll be far easier for you to add the test results now. And we've also revised the grading guide and adjusted the weighting of the post tests so that you'll be able to see an instant improvement in those issues we've been having around, students' perception that they're going backwards. So I'm just going to show you a quick sneak peek. This is a quick example of how you'll be able to enter test scores manually from now on directly into the workbook, the reports tab. And here's an example, which is probably too small to read, but just a quick reminder that the new grading guide is available on the resources tab. You just need to filter by teacher resources. And here is the way, which I think is a really elegant solution, that we have adapted the weighting for the post tests. So you can see that prior to term 3, the questions got progressively more challenging and the marks reflected that. So, and questions 7 and 8, if you're not familiar, are actually from above the level. So that's why students, who may have not done well on questions 7 and 8 were being unfairly penalised. So what we've done now is flip the lid on that. So you can see that right now, so live on the system, we've already fixed this, is that questions 1 to 6, which are assessing students' understanding of the level, each now are awarded 4 marks. Questions 7 and 8 are there still because it's really important for you to be able to see who is performing beyond the level, because you need to respond to that accordingly and provide additional depth or challenge. But you can see now that out of total 26 marks, only 2 of those marks are beyond the level. So if a student performs really well at level, but then they don't get them correct in 7 and 8, it's outside the level, they'll still get a great mark, and it's much more reflective of their ability and of the intention of the series. So I'm just going to now spend a quick minute flipping through. I know we've got probably only a couple of minutes spare, but here's a bunch of other small changes that we're making because we got a lot of feedback on them. So particularly down into phase 1 from term 4, or actually I'm told in September by our digital team, you'll have a new QR code login for students that you can choose. So you'll be able to print a whole class worth of these cards here on the right, cut them up, laminate them, stick them in the front of kids' books, and the login journey for tablets will be much more simplified. And a reminder too, for, if you're using the program up into phases 2 and 3, we do have single sign-on for Google Classroom and Microsoft. So if you weren't aware of that, there is the option to simplify your login if you are using any of those platforms. We're expanding the Read to Me functionality. So Read to Me currently is available just within the content of the book. Very soon you'll be able to have the Read to Me function accessible on all downloadable resources. So activity sheets, BLMs, whatever you like. And as well as within the pre and post tests themselves. So if you do have students with low literacy levels that are doing tests, they'll be able to have every question read to them.
Yeah, and also for those kids, sometimes it's really hard to wrap your head around a question, even though your reading level is quite good. I know when I was in Auckland, I was struggling with a year seven test question, and it took me minutes to wrap my head around it. But if I had the Read to Me, it could have just eased my cognitive load a little bit. So I just spend time working through it rather than just going, what is it saying to me? Yes.
Yeah, and also lots of really strong feedback from schools who are saying that, the parents at the school are from non-English speaking backgrounds. They are really capable at helping their students, their children with their homework, but their language isn't where it needs to be. So something helpful too to keep in mind, I think, for parents. So we're also making some changes, like I read before. This is one of the technical issues we're having. There are some images of the new yearly planners, the new look term planners in the presentation here, which I can share with you. But essentially what we're doing is restructuring those so that they're much more easy to edit and move things around in. We're inserting hyperlinks to all of the resources that you'll need. You can see some of those here. This is an example of the lesson plan where links to any digital resources on the platform are easily accessible there. So what will happen is that we'll be replacing the curriculum planner and the term planners. We're amalgamating those documents and we're just linking everything up so that it's much more seamless. We're also improving, sorry, I just clicked twice. We're also improving the resources tab. We've got some strong feedback that things are quite challenging to find and sort and filter by. So you'll see, from term 4, I think, all of the resources organized by unit and by topic. So you can select the unit you're in. That will expand to show you all of the resources in each one of those topics within the unit. So a much more logical and easy way to find what you're looking for. We're also adding brand new mastery tasks at years 1 to 3. They don't exist currently, so we're adding those. And we're adding more of them at years 4 to 8 because we've had such great feedback on them. And we're also adding new interactives for all topics in year 8. And one final thing before we wrap up is that we've also created a whole school report that will allow you as APs or heads of department or even as classroom teachers to track engagement across your whole school. So you'll be able to see in real time how many active users you have at any time of day, what resources are being used, peaks and troughs of usage. And that's the first step in a bigger report that will build out over the coming years where you'll be able to filter down into individual student resources, tracking hopefully results over time, over the year. So a really valuable report to have some rich data in there. And while we're on reporting, just a quick reminder that we have an integration with Hero available now. So schools using Hero can download their results from Oxford Digital and upload them into Hero, and that data is then heroized. Okay, that brings us to the end of the sort of, I guess, more formal part of the presentation. So we'd love to hear from you if you've got questions about any of the things that we've talked about today or something completely unrelated. Please feel free to post in the chat or turn your microphone and camera on and let's have a chat. We do only have a few minutes, so I apologize for that, but we're happy to stick around for a couple more minutes if you've got questions. Do we have any takers, Brian? Anyone game enough to jump on in?
So I've enabled everyone's cameras and mics, but it's just up to you to turn it on if you'd like to. You don't have to. Feel free to use the chat, as Dan said. Question from Vicky. Yeah, can you show us what the Hero integration looks like?
Vicky, we will be able to do that shortly. We have currently got a request in with Hero to show us. I've got some training booked in with Hero, so I can't yet, but as soon as I do, I think we'll be able to share that. I know I've got one of my schools in Endeavour School has the integration up and running. They've got some good feedback. There's still some things that they're working with, both with Hero and with us, in terms of getting the data to render in the way that they want it to. But we're actively working on that. Are we advocating any particular manipulatives? Lee, would you like to speak to that one?
We provide a list of the manipulatives for each lesson and each year level. We do have a comprehensive list, so you've got it all in one place. I think that might be on the dashboard. If it's not,
yes, the materials list for sure.
Materials list, definitely. Yep. So we just make sure that the manipulatives are, we try really hard to make sure that they're really the things that you've already got in the classroom or that are easy to get and that are affordable, paddle pop sticks and dice and all that sort of stuff. So have a look at the materials list, Sue. But yes, we don't advocate for, another program's manipulatives. No.
Next question's from Vicky. Can we see the whole school assessment from a DP view? That's our intention, Vicky. So as I mentioned, the whole school report will be launched for back to school next year. And what it will be showing initially in sort of phase one is engagement. So there will be different levels of access available within that report. So if you are an administrator, say in a DP role versus a classroom teacher, you will have different access rights. So, head of department will eventually be able to look down into each of the classes of the teachers within their team and have a look at individual student results. But we are working towards that now. And I think that what we'll do is launch phase one and seek feedback from teachers about what they like and what they don't. And we'll build out that report over the coming years to add more and more visibility.
You will definitely be able to see student progress, just not this first release, Vicky.
Yeah.
I was talking to Ria about it this morning, Dan. But yeah, it's not years away. It's like within the next 6 months. Yeah.
I mean, what I've been talking to schools about is the possibility. I mean, I also talked to Ria, who's our digital product manager, about what I think would be a really great report, which would be to be able to go down into an individual student's results and view their results on the pre and post tests for aligned units and topics over the phase or over multiple phases, so that you're not just looking at their result at the start of the week and the end of the week, but what you're sort of getting is much richer data where you've got, in topic 1, unit 1, you've got their results for year 4. Then you can see the same unit topic for 5, 6, 7, 8, who knows? Because I think then a longer sort of tracking student growth and development over a longer period is sort of much richer data, sort of more reliable data.
Yeah, no, that sounds great.
So that's what I'll be pushing for.
Yeah. Janet's got a question that I don't quite understand, but you might, Dan.
How the outline program and the exercise? How the outline program?
What I want to say, Janet, is that the print student book and the student book that's online is exactly the same. And sometimes there's a preference depending on the school or the classroom or the student. But it's often good. I mean, not many schools send the workbooks home, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think it's a good thing, but that's just my opinion. But if they forget their student book, they can easily access the content online. But it is exactly the same. Online, they're able to use the digital pen to put their answers in. So it's not as if it's, they're there and they're having to write in their exercise books, but it's often good for them to write in their exercise books because you can actually see they're working if they're working online. But they're exactly the same, Janet. Do you think Dan, what do you think? And Janet just
I think so.
No. It's just about flexibility and also about accessibility, Janet, too, to make sure that if you've got students in your class that have challenges with their reading or are visually impaired, they can actually hear the book being read to them, which is really important.
Hopefully that answers your question, Janet. Vicky, see, we've got no takers on anyone wanting to open up their microphone. Isn't that interesting? I understand.
You've done a good job, Dan.
When can we start to enroll for the training that you discussed earlier? I will share right now, in fact, the final screen, which has got a link to our website, oxforddigital.co.nz. You can go there and there is a link on the PLD tab at the top of the screen to pedagogy and practice there. So really, it was only last week that we met with evaluation associates to discuss this idea to really change our pedagogy and practice sessions for terms 4 and term 1. So we'll be working on developing those programs. So you are more than welcome to, there's a bunch of either in-person events, which may be in your area. There are also some online events. The numbers are capped, I think, at 3 attendees per school because evaluation associates like to keep those workshops at a manageable number of attendees so that everyone can be involved rather than it being a huge sort of thing where no one can really get any airtime. But the answer, Janet, or no, Vicky, it is that you can go on there now and register. But you'll notice that we haven't yet updated the title and the little bio for those sessions. We'll be doing that next week when I'm back in the Melbourne office. All right. Well, we're just pushing sort of 5 minutes or so over time now. So unless there are any more questions, we might wrap it up there. But thank you for joining again. And please do drop a comment in the chat. We love constructive feedback. If you found this session useful, or if you wanted to find out anything else that we didn't cover that you would have liked us to talk about, please do let us know so that we can, make improvements to the session. We'll be running it every fortnight during term 3. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you again.